And so the first thing, let's have our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I've asked Amy if she could do the invocation for us today.
Absolutely. If we could all bow our heads for a moment of silence. Thank you for each and everyone who is here tonight. While tonight's agenda plans our course, we pray that you, God, will establish our steps and ensure that we satisfy all of the needs that need to be met during tonight's meeting. Help us to avoid thinking of what we want to say when we should instead be listening and absorbing what is being communicated. Strengthen us in our decision making, and should we have different opinions, give us unity of spirit and help us to listen politely as others share their views. May we have a spirit of camaraderie in this room tonight as we work together on a shared mission. Amen.
Amen. So everyone should hopefully have enough time to review the minutes. And if you've done so, could I have a motion for someone for approval of the minutes?
Make a motion.
Okay, Margaret has made a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second? Okay, Dr. Smith has a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. Okay, I guess the minutes are approved. So now we can have our famed executors, directors report.
Thank you all. This evening, we have two agenda items for you all to consider for the Executive Director's Report. The first is actually an application for service, and we have received one applicant from Mrs. Monica King, who submitted her application for the other person position. In your packet, you will see there is some background information. Her application specifically is included, as well as a page that indicates the current membership of the Human Services Board and all of the vacant positions, which we do have several that are vacant. I just want to remind you all and the public, but encourage you to encourage others if you know of people in the community that might be willing to serve in one of these positions. We need 2 consumers of human services, a community-based organization representative. We have 1 vacancy for other person, which again, tonight you're considering Ms. Monica King's application for that. Pharmacist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a registered nurse, and a social worker position. So please do consider those and share that. But for this evening, if you could take a look at Monica King's application, and Carla has spoken with Ms. King, and she confirmed after submitting the application that she does understand the membership requirements and attendance expectations and is interested in participating. So if you all would like to consider making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to appoint her, then please do so. And
I'd like to make a motion to go into closed session to discuss this.
Do we have a second with Dr. Smith's motion to go into closed session to discuss Ms. King's? Or
so I'm going to read, because it's been a while since we've had a closed session. So within the bylaws or within your operating rules, I want to just read section 6 of the closed session. So the Human Services Board may hold closed sessions as provided by law. The board shall commence a closed session only after a motion to go into closed session has been made and adopted during an open meeting, which just occurred. And the motion shall state the purpose of the closed session, If the motion is based on North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11, it must also state the name of the citation or law that renders the information to be discussed privileged or confidential, and if the motion is based on 143, 118, 11A3, it must identify the parties in any existing lawsuits concerning which the public body expects to receive advice during the closed session. So the point of this is that the ability to go into closed session is very specific in regard to the general statutes. One is for attorney's advice, and I'm going to actually pull up 143, 18, 11. Carla, do you happen to have that up?
What do you want me to look up?
General Statute 143-318.11A1. Yeah. 143-318.11. And then we can get down to it. Just want to make sure that we go into closed session for the reasons that we are allowed to go into closed session. So the purpose for that motion.
You're asking Dr. Smith what
Yes,
the
sir.
purpose of the motion for requesting a closed session.
I would like to discuss this applicant, her application, and I didn't know if we wanted to do that publicly, but if y'all would rather do that, that's fine too. I just thought it would be better to discuss it in private.
Is there a middle ground on that?
Well, I think that there would be, and actually,
So we
so without even going into that, one of the things that we've done in the past is we have had, you all have decided that you wanted to have a committee, and you could form a committee, which could include all of you, except for that, then you would have a quorum, so that wouldn't work, but you can have a subcommittee, and within that subcommittee, you can obviously talk to the different members, and then you can consider this application and bring that back if you would like to interview Ms. King or just discuss the application and find out additional information. Then y'all can do that as a subcommittee and then bring that back to the board.
Short of that, like, is it possible to open discussion on it now, and then if we
It is
did not
absolutely
have
possible.
consensus
I
to
do
that,
not
we could
think, because I don't think that, and I just wanted to make sure, so I apologize, I wasn't prepared with the closed session reasons until this moment. But I do not think that just discussing an application, unless there is an associated legal component to that, is grounds for going into closed session. And so I think you can have open discussion on the application now, and if you would like to then have a subcommittee, then you all can elect to make that happen as well.
I do have a legal concern.
In that instance, since we don't have an attorney present today for the meeting, I'm thinking maybe what we should do is table the agenda item and get that feedback so that we can have an attorney present to review that concern.
Excuse me, then. When Dr. Smith said that, so he just mentioned maybe some legal concerns, so I definitely, if that's the case, I don't think that having an open, based on what Dr. Smith has said, I don't think having an open session would be really a good thing to do, especially it might be some pertinent information or personal information. So I like the idea of, how about this committee that you were just suggested, so that we can hear and maybe discuss that information more as some type of session without being an open like this, especially if there's some type of legal issue or concern.
Is it that there is a legal concern, or that you're concerned that we might have a legal concern based on the discussion?
Well, there's a legal concern,
Okay,
definitely.
okay. Well, that, I mean, it's two different things, that's why I wanted to understand, you know.
Well,
It's
I
definitely
still
legal
would rather,
concern.
May I ask you all to consider in that instance then, again, because we don't have legal representation here from the county, to be able to table that and bring it back to the next board meeting, and then we'll make sure that we have an attorney present for that and go into closed session at that time. I think that would be just, I want to make sure that we follow the guidelines appropriately, and that the closed session is handled appropriately also according to the general statutes, and that we have the ability to have feedback if there is a legal concern.
So that option would allow, if we postponed it then, we could have legal here and do a closed session so that we still addressed it as a group,
Right.
avoiding
Right.
the subcommittee that would further delay.
Yes.
I make a nomination for that.
I'll second that. I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, so can you repeat the nomination?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The motion, excuse me?
Yes, yeah, sorry. I motion that we postpone to the next meeting so that we can have legal present and go into closed session then to have a discussion.
Dr. Smith seconded that motion.
Yes, I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay. Is there anything else on the executive director's report?
Yes. The next item is to review and approve the Consolidated Human Services Board Rules of Procedure and your policies. And we have 6 different documents that are in your packet, and Megan is going to scroll through them, although knowing that there are a number of pages, I think if you all have questions, we can go through them one at a time. But then if you have specific questions or want her to go to a specific page to further discussion, I think that would probably be the easiest thing. The first document is the rules of procedure. And in that document, the majority of all of these, the majority of the edits were very minor, and to try to enable the language to be consistent. So one of the changes in section 4 that I will point out is to ensure that the general statute was 130A-39 and 130A-43. It previously said just 130 without the A, and that 130 was repealed, and 130A is what has taken its place. And then under section 4, we've made several changes to include for my title in alignment with the general statutes, which utilize the term director versus executive director, so we've included that throughout. And that is really the majority of the changes there. And then at the end, underneath the final section, training, that's largely just capitalization and a little bit of punctuation, and then finally the signature lines, having that be written in accordance with the name of this board, which is the Consolidated Human Services Board. So we've cleaned that up to make that be consistent. I think it probably would make sense to go through these one by one, maybe, and make a motion on each one if there are any questions or concerns, we can address them individually.
Sounds good to me. Are we going to go one by one?
Yes.
Okay.
So this first one is the Consolidated Human Services Board Rules of Procedure.
Is there any way you can make that bigger?
8 under training, it says all board members shall receive ongoing training. May I ask what that training entails? Page 8.
Yes.
What it says.
Sorry. So during the different, so obviously when you come onto the board, you go through an initial training with Carla and the division directors, but then throughout each of the meetings, we have sessions that are considered trainings. And Carla, do you have one immediately that comes to mind? I know we have a
Yeah,
couple
I'm
that.
doing one in a few months actually on, it's the roles and responsibilities of the board. Just to kind of update everybody on the roles and responsibilities. And that's through public health accreditation.
So the trainings are in association with the Public Health Board of Health accreditation requirements, and so that is tied to one of them. And if there are items that you all would like to receive training on in association with the work that we do, or your role on this board, then we can make that happen as well.
Are these trainings mandatory or no?
Yes, in order.
For public health accreditation, I'm going to try and probably do it in April. So I do encourage all board members to attend that meeting because it is required that y'all have a training, I think, within the past 12 months from our site visit that's coming up in the fall.
Is ethics training included in that?
Is ethics training included in that? It is not specifically included, but if that is a training that.
I know it's mentioned in the state legislative.
For the Board of County Commissioners, ethics training is something that they complete at the state level.
Seems like on this board, that would be a good idea, though. Especially when it comes to conflicts of interest.
Carla, can you consider that for the
Yeah,
future?
like if you would like a training on that, I'm sure we could pull
Yeah.
something together.
In the training that you're giving, it'll go over things, not just for us, it's for others as well. Is that right? Like,
Wait, what's the
the
question?
training that you have planned, will it only be for board members or it's for others?
No, it's only for the board
Only
members.
for board members.
It's addressed to the Board of Health board members, is the training. The state, the state develops it, and then I'm just gonna kind of go over.
Is that an annual requirement?
Is the training annually? They update, I believe they update annually on their website. Because the most recent one I was just looking today is December of '23.
So ideally, yes.
So their update is annual, but is the requirement for members of the board to do it annually is another question.
So for part of our accreditation requirement, it has to be,
I believe it's in the past 12 months, but according to our policy, I think we're gonna review that one. It specifically says ongoing training.
right.
It doesn't say
It doesn't
annual
have to be
training.
annually, and that is one of the next components.
Is that something we ought to adopt, as to have some frequency built
Yes.
into it?
Well, and that is part of the language, and that is what we were proposing. But not in this one. And not in the specific document it is.
Where are you? Are they online?
The rules of procedure are online, and the other policies are just within a binder that we keep here, but we actually just talked about this earlier.
We're
and
doing, I have to update a handbook too, because I know some of y'all have gotten handbooks, but that last handbook we did is kind of outdated. But whenever I update it, it will have these, if y'all
Yeah,
ever
because I
these
know,
policies.
like, when Jeff had mentioned to me coming on the board, like, I tried to look it up to figure out, what the board did, and I didn't see any of these documents. That
So,
would have been helpful too.
This document that we're looking at now, the operating procedures, is on the Union County, underneath the boards and committees, underneath the Board of County Commissioners, there's boards and committees, and then there's Consolidated Human Services Board there, and this document is there. It's probably been there for a year or so, because it may have been after you started, because when we worked to update the website as a whole, we tried to make sure that we had perfect information there, and that definitely is one of the documents that would matter. Good question, thank you. Do you all have any other questions about the rules of procedure document?
I don't have any myself. I read, you provided me a copy of that, and it's
Yes.
pretty detailed. And I mean, I think maybe everybody should have the copy. If they don't have it, and they have some chance to go over it.
Right.
But
So would there be a motion to adopt the changes as noted in the rules of procedure document?
I'll make a motion to adopt it with the changes made.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay.
All right, the next document is the policy development policy, which is an ironic name. But we have to have a policy on developing policies, and so that's what this one is, which is page 26, and Megan also has pulled it up for you to see. The initial changes obviously added the word consolidated, because again, that is the formal name of this board per the state statute. And the format, so we have policies within human services, and we used to have the subject as a line item. We have changed that, and that's why you'll see on all of these that is struck through, and it now becomes part of the title. And then we have a date that will be reviewed, if necessary, to be reviewed on an annual basis. And then the revised date, which obviously is proposed as today. And then throughout, the changes that you'll see are basically, again, just to enable the name Consolidated Human Services Board, or CHSB. And then underneath the process, in bullet number 1, to try to make that sentence a little more clear, because policy determination, it just seemed to read a little easier if a potential issue, problem, or concern was likely to require a new policy or adjustments to a policy versus policy determination. So trying to make it in more language that is a little easier to understand. And then same thing for bullet 2. Initial determination based on existing applicable policy. And bullet number 3, same thing about policy determination, that we'll consider the issue and if it warrants a new policy or adjustments to existing policy. And then CHSB, and that basically is the extent of that. And then the signatures also to align so that they'll all be identical.
Mostly grammatical.
It's mostly grammatical changes with nothing of major substance, except for to try to make policy determination be able to be more easily understood. So do you all have any questions about that?
Except changing it to policy development initiative. Would be better than policy development policy. Just English language.
I always had a question on this, Janet, when it talks about the policies. When it talks about the policies, give me some examples of those policies.
There are 5 of them. One of them is this policy that you're looking at, and the other 4 we are about to go over. It will be the rules adoption policy, the staff development, training, and education policy, the appeals policy, and the public participation for community health improvement strategic plan policy.
Well, the reason why I asked that question, when you sent me this package, it seemed like the board really never exercised as much authority as it seemed like they had, according to this operating procedures here. Or maybe we just didn't know.
That's because we're pretty streamlined and a well-oiled machine.
Okay.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, hopefully our goal is that we're doing these things appropriately, because well, that we are responsible for operating on a day-to-day basis. And so, but if there are things that need to be adjusted, then by all means, we will make those adjustments.
I agree, there's a lot more authority than I realized, like in reading it, there really is.
The first thing I read was talking about that we were administrative board. I was always on the assumption that we were just an advisory board, but according to the document, it said it was more, this Consolidated Human Services Board was really more than just an advisory board from what I read. But the changes look good to me.
Is that a nomination?
So I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you very much. If we could move on to the rules adoption policy. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you didn't vote. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
All in favor of the motion to approve?
Aye.
All in favor say aye. Nays, no.
All right, so the third policy is the rules adoption policy. It is on page 28 of your packets, and Megan also has that pulled up. Similarly, we just have the name and the title, made some grammatical and formatting changes, and again, changed the title of the board, and then we did adjust, the only substantive changes are we did adjust the process and the law guidance documents to appropriately indicate the General Statute 130A-39 and 130A-43.
So there's only changes. I'll make another motion to approve. So Dr. Smith second the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
All right, the next item is the staff development, training, and education policy. And again, similarly, the formatting changes, we do have, in that it does describe the purpose of education. We did spell out Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, just for complete transparency. And this does call out the fact that public health staff are required to participate in annual training that includes these items. So not the board, but you all are, we want to let you know that we have completed that. And so this does happen, and we do make sure that it happens, and we do that to be able not only to have our staff be well prepared, but to be able to meet the accreditation requirements. And so most of the language throughout here is in regard to what those specific opportunities are that we provide for staff. And there really hasn't been any change there. The only other item is that there was a note initially that said, based on parameters as on the last page as set forth in number 3 above, and there was no number 3 above because it was just bulleted. And so, we wanted to remove that one line.
For clarity, on the training, well, we'll go, I guess it's not part of what we're approving, but to understand that you're proposing that in April.
March, April, maybe May.
I was looking back, I know there hadn't been one since I was here, which means that that's 5 members who haven't gone through, training, because I started with 3, and there's been 2 since then, and that, but 5 of it's a lot. You know, I tend to think that would be helpful.
Agreed. That's after the onboarding training, right? Okay.
The tour and stuff, is that what you meant?
Yes.
Yeah, we did that.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Dr. Smith makes a motion to approve this training.
Second.
We got a second by Amy. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay.
Thank you. There are two additional policies. The next one is the appeals policy. And so the Consolidated Human Services Board has to follow the appeals procedures as written in the general statutes. And this, again, the majority of this was just spacing and then changing to the Consolidated Human Services Board with one substantial change, and that was, so this basically, the language in the process basically mimics 130A-24, and the section 3, there is a sentence that was added at the end that says the scope of review in district courts shall be the same as in general statute 150B-51, and that was missing from the original policy, and so we wanted to make sure that we added that to this.
Can you give an example of what is meant by imposition of administrative penalties?
Can you point me where that is? I'm sorry.
Process 1, appeals concerning the enforcement of rules adopted by the local board and concerning the imposition of administrative penalties by a local health director.
Dennis?
What does that mean?
So,
It would be if there's rules that are adopted by, and I'm just going to use an example of like irrigation wells, because a lot of counties would have that, in which there's state rules around drinking water wells, but some counties also have rules around irrigation, or any well, whether it's used for drinking or irrigation, because anyway, they can be converted, blah, blah, blah. But if you had rules in play and there were penalties or if someone was appealing, this would relate to, I'm assuming, the appeal of not only just the decision of the rule or the decision that was made in regard to, like if someone was saying they wanted to challenge how that rule was applied, basically they're challenging the staff action that would be taken. So the board would hear that and they would make a decision. And but the problem with that one is there's not penalties, associated with that, unless, there wouldn't be penalties associated with it.
Penalty would be
That they would not issue in the permit or,
some action.
yeah.
What about the dangerous dog statutes? Is that part of this? That's something that comes through here
Yeah.
at some point.
It is, although the board is acting on the dangerous dog and potentially dangerous dog declaration based on the county's animal control ordinance. They have an ordinance that speaks to dangerous dog and potentially dangerous dogs, which names the Human Services Board as the appealing body. So it's acting in regard to that ordinance, or the board is acting in regard to that ordinance specifically. This would be if you were acting where the board were to take a particular rule There have been, it would be a new rule that is applicable. I mean, in some counties, prior to, for example, tobacco and smoking, some county boards of health or human services board would pass rules that would actually restrict or apply certain conditions around public smoking, following those protocols and procedures.
This would actually go further though, is what I'm saying, to ensure that the property, like that you had the full notice, that if the water wasn't potable, you know, that someone wasn't already occupying the house and now not necessarily being told.
So that would require legislative changes at the state.
Okay.
Yeah, we are actually complying with the regulations as are written.
And you can't have county ones above that?
They can't be more restrictive.
About these appeals, this board, if someone were to appeal, we would have to reconvene, or it says we have 15 days of the receipt of a notice to appeal to really basically get back with the person who has made the appeal. So that means this board would have to somehow reconvene, is that correct?
And have quorum?
Yes. That is correct, and to Dennis's point, that is based on the general statute. The good news is that has not happened. Right.
Don't say it.
Well, that's good, because, like I say, the way it's written, it's like if it's appeals, as if the board is the one who has made the decision or whatever.
So going back to my original question, it doesn't change anything if we don't currently have any penalties? Like the context, the way it's written, does not matter?
That's correct,
'Cause there
because
was
if
before the
there
and
were
was
penalties to be, right, we need to have something in place so that in the event that there were a circumstance where this would be applicable,
Okay.
we've got our process or policy in place.
Well, I make a motion to approve.
Margaret seconds it. Amy made a motion to approve. Margaret seconds it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
And the last item is the public participation for community health improvement strategic plan policy. And this is really very messy, and I apologize for that, because really mostly that is spacing, the messiness. But the only items that have been changed here, in case that is too difficult to read, is to simply, again, add the word consolidated, to make this indicate that in the second paragraph under process during the course of the community health assessment, human services agency staff, because our staff from multiple divisions within the human services agency do complete and work on the community health improvement plan and strategic plan, and so that is relevant due to the structure of the organization for it to not just include public health. And that's actually it.
I have a question on this one. In the process, right, where it requires us, it relies on us to provide input in the development of and dissemination of the public health data. Can you give me an understanding of?
So you may recall, specifically in association with the community health assessment, Stephanie and Dennis have brought forth information talking about that, and then there actually have been several other components that, as you guys have asked some follow-up questions, but that information has been brought to this board, and so specifically, it's the community health assessment, and then each year we will also complete the state of the county health report, which is the SODG health report, and so that will be completed in the next couple of months, and Stephanie will be bringing that to you also within the next couple of months, for your review at that point.
So the next point on this one where it says during the course of the CHA, it's still human services staff, right, that helps solicit the assistance of community partners and not the board? That one?
Yes, although by all means, you guys are welcome and encouraged to not only participate in those sessions, but also to help solicit other engagement, which obviously you do participate, which is much appreciated. And so, but the requirement is for staff to make that happen.
Thank you. That's my only
Yes,
question.
ma'am.
While you're fixing spacing, the last word on purpose has extra spaces in it.
Thank you.
Oh,
We will make sure that there are not double spaces.
I think that's a
It may be,
justification too.
I think it may be also, this.
It looks like it was converted from a PDF to Word.
It's
and-
tricky,
Oh, yeah.
yes, but then it was
That would-
cleaned up in Word and there, yes, but thank you. And we'll make sure that that is, if it is justification, we'll make sure that it looks appropriate when we save the final version.
I have one question on this before we, when I look back to, page 13 in our handout, where it lists all of the things the board has authority to do, where does something like recommend creation of local human service programs fall within all of this?
So that is actually just part of the rules component, and if you were to want to recommend programs, obviously we would encourage you to work with us and talk with us about that, and then you would advocate with the county manager and the Board of County Commissioners in that regard.
Okay. Thank you.
I think for that to happen,
Okay.
we would probably need to be made aware of when those opportunities, surface, if we want to be involved or have some input or something.
Yes, sir.
Well, and I think what you're saying is that pathway would allow for a more enriched discussion for the board because we'd already, would have more to bring to the table about
Absolutely.
what was being
Right.
proposed.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you all think that something should be proposed, then obviously you can bring that up as well.
I don't think we realized some of that before.
Funding and
when we talked about-
resources matters though, to
That's
be
what
able
I was
to actually
say.
do
The
the work.
next part is gonna be that
This
might have
is-
that authority, but that doesn't mean it's funded.
Correct. Well, and the Board of County Commissioners actually does have to take action to be able to implement any new programs.
And they
this is-
can undo it after
They-
we did put it through?
Yes, they absolutely
And
can.
speaking of that, do we not have representation from them right now?
We do. Commissioner Williams is the designee.
Okay, so it said December, like, for him. Okay.
That's when he was reappointed.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that date is the reappointment date. And Mrs. Lance, except for that I'm not to recognize you, Mr. Ford is.
So I guess I see Ashley has her hand up, so.
She's been patient, I interrupted.
Thank you. I don't have a mic, so I'll be very loud. I was just going to give you an example of when that happened 5 years ago, back when Michelle was our executive director and brought to our local board the idea of the Behavioral Health Collaborative and starting that and receiving funding potentially from the county commissioners and us hiring school social workers and behavioral health therapists for the schools. This board made the recommendation to start that program and sent that to the county commissioners. So there has been active participation in the past in regards to creating new programs for human services.
Well, that's cool. That's some pretty good precedent there.
Yeah, it's very cool. And that obviously is such an impactful program, but
Yeah.
and then in order to make that happen, there had to be funding
And we had to get money.
and position creation, et cetera, which only the Board of County Commissioners can create positions or provide funding, or authorize funding, I should say.
And in between there, could the plan be for grant writing? Like if it was a proposal, or would that still have to go through the county commissioners for it?
Can you repeat that question?
So if it was something that was proposed, like, and you were also proposing a funding avenue, right? Like,
Yeah, so, we are required to take, before Union County can apply for grants, we take those grant applications to the Board of County Commissioners, who authorizes us to either apply or not apply. And there's a lot of good reasons for that, and I'm sure way more than what I'm about to say, but one good one is that typically grants require, well, first of all, they require staffing resources and other things like that to actually implement if you're awarded. And then secondly, they also require typically matching funding or some sort of funding on the local level. And so you want to know that you have, the board would want to know that it's going to support whatever that is before you apply and take the time to make that effort. Now, obviously, we do research on the potential opportunities, and we need to do that in advance, but the actual applications themselves do go to the Board of Commissioners first.
Thank you.
Okay.
She was saying regardless of the dollar amount, they go, all grant applications go to the board before we apply.
I'm sure they want to see sustainability too on such
Absolutely.
grants.
So any other questions? Those are all very good questions, and thank you for your engagement on the rules adoption policy.
Do we have a motion?
second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, carries.
Apologize, I misstated that. I was looking at the rules adoption when that was the public participation for community health improvement strategic plan policy.
I noticed.
Yes, sorry. I flipped back there to answer your earlier question. I apologize.
Okay. Is it time for the division reports now?
Sir, we have one other item that is the environmental health, well, it is divisional, but yes, so yes.
That's Tracy.
Ms. Tracy.
Okay, just switching gears here a little bit. I'm just gonna speak loudly if that's okay. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, so this evening I was just going to give an update and timeline for the recent recall. Maybe you've heard about it in the news related to lead in Wanabana applesauce and fruit purees. So I'm just going to roll through this timeline to let you all know kind of some things that are happening behind the scenes so you can have a good idea of what we're doing, our role, and our involvement and partnership with other agencies. So in August 2023, 4 North Carolina children who resided in Catawba, Cleveland, and Madison counties presented with elevated blood lead levels leading to an environmental investigations in their homes. During these environmental investigations, no obvious sources of lead-based paint or other housing-related sources were identified. So staff completed a spice and home remedy survey data collection form to assess the potential food sources of lead. Based on those surveys, environmental health staff collected samples of Wanabana applesauce, apple cinnamon fruit puree. This product is sold nationally through multiple retailers such as Amazon and particularly Dollar Tree. This product involved in these cases were purchased at Dollar Tree. Just an interesting note of context, the branch head for Children's Environmental Health at the state made note that the FDA is not always, they haven't always responded to our information that we've shared related to elevated lead in food and spices. They typically cite lack of evidence, lack of understanding of the children's high consumption rates. Their thought previously being that there wasn't enough lead in the amount of spices in a product, or the child wasn't consuming enough to add to the elevated blood lead levels. So what they did at the state is they modified the collection form. included a lot of extra information like consumption history, lot numbers, purchase location, a lot of that very important data that they need to get involved. So during our and just to make a note, during our Union County investigations, we also not only collect that information, but take pictures of products, take an example of that food product, so that we have as much evidence as possible. In September of 23, so that next month, the state lab analysis indicated, because, those samples had to go to the state lab in Raleigh, take some time to process those. And they were found to be extremely high in concentration of lead. In fact, they were around 2,180 parts per billion, which is 200 to 300 times the draft FDA baby food action level of lead, which is 10. Families involved in the environmental investigations were informed of the results and instructed to discard or not use the products. In mid-October, investigation reports were completed and uploaded into NC Lead, which is our state lead database. It's a lock system. Excuse me, it's HIPAA protected. The North Carolina senior epidemiologist, her name is Melanie Napier, reported the elevated lead levels to FDA. And as is always done for food and spices containing any lead level above 1 parts per million. Then in late October, a parent in Madison County, North Carolina, contacted a local TV reporter, which caught the attention of North Carolina's Assistant Secretary of Public Health, Dr. Susan Consagra, who happened to be attending an Association of State and Territorial Health Officials meeting and was sitting right next to an FDA representative. Thank you. This shifted things into high gear, consequently, and the North Carolina Department of Ag was quickly brought on board to conduct retail food product assessments at Dollar Tree and other outlets across the state. So what you have to remember here is, public health, we deal with the child lead poisoning investigations. You know that we're involved in permitting of food establishments. Packaged foods and those types of things are regulated by USDA, in this case NCDA, so there's some crossover with the agencies. Then on Saturday, October 28th, FDA issued a public health advisory, and the manufacturer agreed to a voluntary recall. The ability for the FDA to take this step quickly was partly due to the required data being collected, as I mentioned, by the environmental health staff in those 3 North Carolina counties, and the effectiveness of the North Carolina State Laboratory of Public Health. FDA, the Health and Human Services at the state, sent out announcements and press releases and highlighted the joint efforts of NCDHHS, local health departments, NCTA, and FDA. And I just want to make note of the actions that we took in environmental health and public health. So we sent out notifications, to the public and impacted industries. We sent out a children's environmental health snapshot that was sent to child care facility contacts, 139 of those, and that went out on our Gov delivery system. The children's environmental health snapshot is a quick way that we're able to reach out with emergency information or very important information in a timely fashion to our child care facilities. Also, direct emails were sent to child care facilities, charter schools, public, private, and religious schools, a little over 200 of those. Direct emails were sent to UCPS, Child Nutrition Services Director, and supervisory staff so they could be on the lookout for it. We posted the information to the environmental health, community support and outreach, public health, and DSS web pages with the assistance of public communications team. We posted on Union County's social media accounts, and we covered this issue in the October Lunch and Learn, and then later it was in the December Human Services newsletter, which you guys may have seen. So moving on from there into November, the investigation was transferred to FDA's Coordinated Outbreak Response and Evaluation Team. They're called CORE. network for additional follow-up in collaboration with the CDC and state and local partners. Additional products were added to the recall, and that includes Schnucks cinnamon applesauce and a Weiss cinnamon applesauce. On November 30th, 2023, FDA in Wanabana's root cause investigation indicates that the cinnamon is most likely the source of the elevated levels in the recalled product. So now that we've evaluated that applesauce, we're finding it's the cinnamon in particular. The cinnamon was used. The cinnamon that was used was supplied by a distribution company located in Ecuador. And the FDA is at that point continued to work with the Ecuadorian authorities. FDA confirmed that the company does not import cinnamon directly to the U.S. It's just in these food products at this point. On December 8th, at the FDA's request, NCDHHS and local health departments were asked to assist with the recall effectiveness at the Dollar Tree stores. So the Environmental Health Section of the state, across the state of North Carolina, and NCDA developed an action plan where local health departments used effectiveness check protocol to survey Dollar Tree stores. So here in Union County, we did survey local Dollar Tree stores. In fact, I did it myself. We did not find any of these recalled items on the shelves, but I did find them in back stock. And that's a picture of a shopping cart full of them. So thank goodness. These items were pulled about 2 days after the recall was issued, so I would anticipate that some families still purchased some. On December 22nd, 2023, the State Environmental Health Director, Larry Michael, reported that local health departments conducted 217 recall effectiveness checks across 68 counties, resulting in the removal of contaminated products from 11 stores. December 26, 2023, FDA provided additional context regarding the amount of lead because they're continuing to test or continuing to evaluate the products, and found in the cinnamon used in the recalled products. So the highest level at this point was 5,110 parts per million, which is 2,000 times the level of 2.5 parts per million being considered for bark spices by the international standard setting body. In addition, FDA and state partners sampled at least 136 non-cinnamon containing products. Even those from the same lots as the recalled products, all had been negative for elevated lead. So that gives you information that it's the cinnamon. On January 22nd of this year, 2024, CDC's National Center for Environmental Health is collaborating with state and local health department to conduct case-finding efforts. A case definition at that point is developed, and that was an individual with a blood lead level at 3.5 micrograms per deciliter or higher, measured within 3 months after consuming a recalled product after November 2023. So at this point, and we're just at the beginning of January, there are a total of 287 cases, 80 confirmed, 187 probable, and 20 suspected, and those ranged across 37 states. So additionally, the FDA received 82 complaints, some additional adverse event reports through the consumer reporting mechanism. On January 5th of 2024, the FDA at that point finds chromium contamination. That's a constituent of lead. It sometimes binds with sodium and calcium, so they find elevated levels of chromium. Chromium levels in the 2 samples of cinnamon were 531 and 1,201 parts per million. Because of the limited amount of cinnamon that's used in the final product, the chromium levels in the recalled Wanabana products were low at 0.566 and 0.590 parts per million. That's because, obviously the straight cinnamon product was much, much higher. The FDA, just to let you know, went ahead and tested for arsenic and cadmium. Those elements were not detected to be above trace levels, so that's a good thing. So now we're at January 9th, 2024. We got a total number of cases of 321. That's 86 confirmed, 209 probable, and 26 suspected. and that's 38 different states now. On January 16th, at that point, the CDC is continuing to receive more information on their complaint lines, and the number are starting to tick up. So then January 23rd, FDA has no indication at this point that the issue extends beyond these very specific recalled products, and no additional confirmed cases at that point. On January, other additional products are linked to the evidence. So a lot of information, and it all started in the western foothills of North Carolina. And that gives you an idea of the work that we do and the importance and how it can expand from a county level, state level, national, international, and example of the work that we do.
I just say, Tracy, I just want to thank you. At first, I was formulating some things in my mind. What were we doing about the local area? Because I watch world news every night, and I've heard about that. And then I was thinking about, okay, what are we doing here? And I just appreciate you because you came back and said you went and disseminated information to all the child care centers and actually went out there yourself. So I just want to say thank you because that's what we should be caring about the public and for our citizens in this county. So you always come with some thorough information. That was a lot, but I'm just thank you for your work that you do about disseminating this information. I did want to ask you though, because I take chromium. I wonder if this is the same type of chromium that you talk this. If you have too much, how could that affect the body?
So
And what is too much?
That might be a question for Dr. Smith.
Okay, well, Dr. Smith, we got doctors on staff too.
Yeah, I'll talk to you afterwards.
Okay. They say chromium, but
Chromium.
is that the same type?
Chromium, yeah, and it can be a neurotoxin, so you want to be careful with the amount you're consuming. You know, some people take supplements, but it's also can be present in food, so you have to be careful on the amount that you're consuming.
Okay. Next.
Any other questions?
No, that's all I have. Anybody else have any more questions for Tracy?
Thank you.
Very thorough. Next, any more reports?
So, I know we usually go around, but since Tracy is on cue right now, at the last meeting, you all inquired about whether or not it was legal for residents to prepare meals from their home and then sell those prepared meals to friends, neighbors, etc. And so we answered that in the last meeting, but it was a very high level answer, and wanted to just give you a little bit of additional information. So there are 2 pages, and if you don't mind skipping those just to make sure, and then I'll come back and make sure that we have enough.
So we'll just mention that individuals can't prepare food in their homes and sell those items to the public for pay without a permit. There are some exemptions to permitting, and those are mainly associated with nonprofits, those that are like 501(c) or political committees. Those, when folks are operating in that fashion, they're typically operating in conjunction with an event, like a fundraising event. So if you think of something like fire department barbecue or Unionville barbecue or churches, things like that, even political committees that are trying to raise money, there are exemptions for that. There's a limit to the time frame though. That can only occur once per month, no more than 2 consecutive days. So there are limits to them being able to do that. So what you're receiving is just information on the different types of specific applications that we have related to food facilities, food establishments, mobile food unit, push cart, a temporary food establishment permit. That can only be issued in conjunction with an approved event. So criteria around those events. And then limited food service, that's like your concession stands that operate with athletic events. A lot of schools have those. Wingate University has some permitted limited food service. But I would ask you, please, if you know of folks in the community that are preparing food for pay, and you have a suspicion that they need a permit, we have a complaint intake line, and you can submit that anonymously if you want to, or you can leave your name. If you don't include your name, we can't respond back with follow-up and let you know any additional actions that are taken. I will say that North Carolina Department of Ag and Consumer Services, they have some responsibilities for permitting and approving home-based businesses. Those businesses, examples of those are like low-risk foods like baked items, jellies and jams, highly acidic foods like pickles and jarred food, things like that. Nothing of a high-risk nature like milk and things like that. So I hope that answers your question.
What you just said on those things, that's an exception, so like the people at the farmer's market selling jellies don't have to have?
From us, from the health department, but they would likely have to have some approval from North Carolina Ag. Because, their requirements are, we want to make sure that they have potable water where they're working, that what they're producing is minimally hazardous, highly acidic, those types of things.
If you hire a chef to come in your home for an event, is that different?
So that's a little bit of a gray area. They may not need a permit because they're on your property preparing your food with you. Now, where it can get kind of muddy is if other people are invited and they are paying. So we would have to, like, if there are questions, sometimes, we just have to kind of hear the full scenario or story before we can, but sometimes there's not just a black and white answer. Kind of dip into the gray area. Thank you.
Thank you for the research on this.
Are there any other division reports?
Yes. Several things. One is, as many of you may know, through media, recent media, the county commissioners recently have taken action to discontinue fluoridation in public water that is owned by Union County. This was two different commissioner meetings. There was a public hearing last week or week before last Monday. There was a meeting prior to the previous meeting. There was also some discussion around this particular subject matter with some individuals to talk about the importance, well, really on both sides of the issue. There were a couple folks who presented at that particular meeting. They have not, it is not final yet because they have to it was not a unanimous vote, and so they have to vote again at the next meeting, which will be coming up February 19th. At that time, it doesn't have to be unanimous again, but if it goes the same with the same vote, it would pass. One of the things that if that happens, one of the things that we have had some communication with Public Works this week, actually, looking at sort of what that would look like in terms of the distribution of public water in Union County, because a large percentage of Union County is served by Lancaster, and it is co-owned, that operation is co-owned by Lancaster County and Union County. So that water, as it is currently written and what the commissioners have put forth, is they would continue to be fluoridating that particular water. So my point in saying that is it's going to look very different across the county, depending upon where you live and who is supplying that particular water. I wanted to make folks aware of that. I did share with Dr. McMahon about this beforehand. I appreciate her comments and assistance and sharing her thoughts as the dentist representative on our board. I appreciate that. But I want to make you all aware that that's out there, and that action will be taken at the next meeting.
Can I interrupt you?
Certainly.
This would be a question for Jana, and kind of circling back what the two of you were saying is, when I had spoken with Dennis prior to this, is my concern is that this is a public health issue, yet we were completely skirted. So my thought is, like, what is our purpose? And like what I was looking at some of these policies, that was to me like exactly what this board should have been addressed with, and yet we weren't even asked, we weren't even brought it to light. Like, I'm not sure, I wasn't able to come in January. I don't know if that was something that was brought up last meeting. But I thought our board served as a, like, kind of sounding, like, we took in the information of these policies that were up for discussion, which they should. I mean, something like this should be discussed periodically as new evidence becomes available. But why we were not brought into a public health, like such a major public health, I mean, water fluoridation has been named like the top 20, like, public health measures. It's like, you know, it's a cornerstone to our oral health, and yet non-health care providers were making decisions about it. And there are providers on this board that are more attuned to reading the research and discerning what was good research, what was bad, and making recommendations, yet our recommendations and our advice was not sought. So I was just a little upset when Dennis brought that up to me, because unless he called me, I had no idea this was going on. And so to me, I mean, that's why I joined this board, is to be a resource to you all, to the community. And I just felt like, why am I here every week to vote on spacing changes and, you know, spelling errors? Like, I have expertise that I am here volunteer. I mean, I don't even take a salary here. I'm here out of the goodness of my heart, and I felt like that's why I'm here. And yet I went last meeting after Dennis had told me, and I went and spoke, but I was a 3-minute conversation that, you know, Joe down the street could have, well, and did come out and talk. I wasn't brought in as like an advisory capacity or anything. And at the first meeting, they were looking at a chiropractor while there was dentists in the room asking them, the chiropractor, their opinion. And so it's like, you have somebody on the board that's volunteering their time and you're not. So I guess I'm just confused as to, like, what our capacity is. I mean, isn't that what the board was established to do? And like, back to Amy's point, like, I don't really know what like, when we were brought on for training, it was just talking about stuff that was very, I don't know. None of the things that we were voting on, like, I've kind of been quiet here just because I'm like, I don't really know my role. Like, I don't want to speak out of turn. So I think a lot of the questions that I have is like, what is my true purpose here? Which I thought that would be a big point, but.
I think the doctor's point is well taken. I didn't know until today that we were more than just, for some reason I thought we were just always an advisory board. But according to these documents, we're supposed to be a little bit more than an advisory board. I think what Dennis was saying, I come from Indian Land. I've been watching those, says no fluoride, no fluoride. Just kind of went over my head. You know, if you're in South Carolina Indian Land, you see there's no fluoride. I didn't know it had too much of an impact here in Union County until, I guess, today.
Yeah, which has been going on for over a month. And they're not seeking our counsel, or, I mean, I don't know. I just think that we should have been made aware and brought it. I think we should have been part of the decision-making process. Like, there needs to be some kind of channel that forces some of these bigger public health issues to come through us as opposed to bypassing us.
And not only that, like, I mean, I usually stay pretty in the know about what's going on and what people are looking at, and I didn't hear about it until Dennis mentioned it earlier, like, okay. I think this is even such a big thing that it should have really been brought to the public, right? Like that we're even having this conversation, you know, and having this consideration. So it brings me back to some of our stuff, like what would be the options from here? Like that's occurred, but what would be the difference between us attending that and trying to speak like Dr. McMahon, yes, did, or advise local officials through the county manager, right? Like on which has more authority, or what would be the next steps, or is there anything that's in between where they can't make a rule on public health without bringing it for approval first?
So I think, and Dennis, please chime in, but,
I think that in terms of feedback to the board, both of those options, you all going before them, and typically that happens through the county manager and requesting an agenda item, and then it would get placed on the agenda and could be discussed that way, assuming that the board approves the agenda item to be placed on the agenda.
Can we as a board make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners?
Absolutely, you can make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
So then how do we go about, like, getting a consensus for a recommendation to make to the Board of Commissioners?
So any requests or recommendations we will take to the county manager, and the county manager will then share them with the Board of Commissioners. Obviously, if you go to the board meeting, which
Yeah,
you
but
did.
I mean, I was speaking as Joe down the street. I mean, yes, I have credentials behind, yeah, it was public comment. I didn't have I had 3 minutes, just like the people that come here. So I would be, and kind of speaking to what you were just saying, I would be more than happy to provide a presentation, just much like the water people that come in and talk about this. But I think, I guess our best bet, and again, if they're gonna listen or not, I don't know, is to make, and what I tried to say in my speech was to, let's slow this down, let's bring it back to the board. And so I guess our best thing would be to put that onto their agenda, that they wait before this next, you know, at the next meeting, instead of voting again, bring us in before any final vote is made. Because I think that's what ideally, like, it just snowball. They voted in January, like, bam, yes, this is what we're doing. And they actually voted unanimously, and then Dennis and I were working with some local, like, dentists and things like that, and we got them down to 3-2. So there was some headway, but I think that this is a big topic, and to make a decision so snap judgment that's gonna affect such a broad spectrum of people, and particularly the vulnerable population that relies heavily on this preventative measure, I think that, I think our best bet would be to ask them to slow it down and bring it back to us.
So we can do that by this, advising the local county manager and trying to get that item, and then be able to present as a board if it got approved, in which she could speak again, but from us as a board.
In essence, you could do both. You could actually choose to make a recommendation to the board to not take the action that they're taking. That's one thing. The other one
and that
would
can be
be
via a letter.
via a letter.
I mean, it
yeah.
doesn't have to be a board agenda action. That can be a letter to the board from
Right.
you all.
And you could also do as you're saying, recommending that they, bring that item back for further deliberation at the Human Services Board level.
I don't think it's fair to ask them to, I'm not prepared to make that presentation right now.
No.
Somewhat prepared,
Right.
and can field like some answers, but to have something more formal, we can't have that discussion, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like to have them vote blanket, no, I don't think that's fair to ask of them. I think they need more information, which I would happily give once I'm prepared, but I think our best action, because this board meeting is next Monday, we don't meet until next month, is to ask them to slow it down.
To halt.
To stall.
and
I mean,
read.
basically to stall. But,
Talk to our commissioner board representative, could be a conduit also, couldn't you?
So the ask would be
Shocking.
to stall and then allow us to advise? I mean, we can do more than one, right? The letter, we can act as a citizen, we can write a letter of support. But today, could we could we take any action as far as setting those wheels in motion and asking them to stall?
Today, you all can take any action that you would like to make a motion to put on the agenda and take action on.
So, I mean, so if we make a motion to recommend that they postpone their final vote until we can have our presentation and make our recommendations, is that something that, like, so we're gonna vote right now, and do we as a board need to make a formal, like, document requesting, or is that something that is secret? I mean, I guess, if we did approve that motion.
Alex, I might suggest we maybe just take a poll in here of what everybody thinks thus far. I mean, everybody in here may be knowledgeable enough of this to feel comfortable with taking a stand one way or another with this
Have a
issue.
forum today?
And if we, if we all already really agree that this shouldn't be removed from the county water, then I think it would be much more effective to go ahead and get a letter to them now before they have a meeting.
I'm fine with that. I don't want to have anybody feel pressured, not feeling that they have enough information to make it an informed decision. So that's the only thing
Well, we're pressured because we weren't informed.
Yeah.
And, not
No, I know, and that's how I felt, like, going into the meeting. I mean, I just was shocked that it would move so quickly without anybody really knowing.
I just learned tonight, and I'm comfortable with taking a stand on that. I'm not comfortable with leaving it unaddressed when we leave here tonight.
As long as it's
I'm comfortable with it too.
I mean, I'll put a motion to request that they not take the fluoride out of the water. That we make a recommendation as a board to not remove it.
I talked to my local dentist several weeks back and had told him, and he had no knowledge. And he's a dentist right in Wesley Chapel and have been there for years. He had absolutely no knowledge that this debate was going on. And when I told him, he was absolutely shocked. And I just, I think something this important, all the dentists, especially the dentists, all the dentists in the whole county should have been communicated with in a formal manner and all of their input invited.
Yeah.
And then had a public hearing to look at all sides of the issue. And ever since this has come up, I mean, I've done that, and I've convinced myself that what's being done currently is the best policy. And I've looked at both sides, and I understand the arguments that other people are taking against it, but I still think this is the best public health policy.
Exactly.
I don't know how many votes you need to pass a quorum, but I don't have enough information from both sides to make a decision tonight, so. But my question would be, if you presented something at our next meeting, do we vote on it after the presentation, or is it vote on the next time? Because we would need to know how long to ask the Board of Commissioners to postpone their vote. Is it just until next month, or is it would be
They are voting on the 19th on the practice of fluoridation and whether or not to remove it.
But if we ask them to postpone it or table it, or we can't do that? Right.
They could choose the first and third.
I think the issue is that the course of action that they're going to take, that they started at the last meeting, was a vote on a very specific directive that was legally developed in discontinuing and what that looked like. That was spelled out. And so they're going to vote, that was voted 3-2, and they're going to vote again on the very same thing. So I don't think they're going to entertain other options until that vote is decided. It'll be passed at the next meeting, because if it would have passed unanimously, it would have passed at the last meeting. But because it was not unanimous, they have to have the second vote on the second reading, essentially.
But nobody's obliged to keep their same vote. Their vote could change
Correct.
if they change
You're
their
correct.
mind.
You're correct.
And so we could influence them possibly.
Yeah, and I agree with Dr. Smith, like, they should be consulting the dentists and the dental professionals in the county, not just, you know, because as a veterinarian, I would want to be consulted on animal welfare issues or animal health issues, you know.
And announcing it. I mean, I even think that, there was some awareness concerns here too.
I have two questions. How can we prevent this from happening again?
Yeah.
How can we prevent them skirting us? Is there, I mean, because really, what's the point? Like, this is a huge, major health issue, and we were not even consulted.
Do we know what the counter argument to not?
Yes. There were three major counter arguments, one of which, am I right to go? Okay, so one of which was it's a potential neurotoxin, which is completely false, but I can prove research, things like that. The other one was that they felt like there was an informed consent issue, which legal statute, there's been like 108 cases, I believe, that have challenged in some version of this, and it's all been struck down. No one has ever won a case that said this is against informed consent, correct? And then the last one, I believe, was informed consent, safety, money. I think they thought it was going to be cheaper if they removed it, correct? Wasn't that the third?
Well, money was, I mean, the reality is it's not super expensive to fluoridate water. It's, the impact, I know in Union County is around $9,000, $10,000.
No, I know, but wasn't that one of their thoughts, is they thought they were going to save money?
That wasn't mentioned.
I mean, it's completely absurd.
That's counterintuitive. I mean,
Well,
like,
exactly.
it's super expensive to fix the damage that will be done over time if these populations don't get the fluoride that they need.
And it's $1 that we invest in community water, it saves you $32 in dental treatment per person. So it was, again, I mean, none. And from what I can understand, I mean, everything that they were trying to, at the very first meeting, there was more of a conversation. It wasn't just public comments, but it was like they were deferring to the chiropractor about what they thought about the neurotoxicity and things like that, which the dentists in there were not addressed, even though they had presented. So basically, to circle back to the biggest one, which is potential for neurotoxicity, a lot of the studies that people try to cite for proof that there is neurotoxic effects is in Harvard Medicine did a rat study where they subjected these rats to 100 to 200 times the amount of fluoride. It's kind of like an astronomical 200 times the amount of fluoride that we put in the water, and they're like, yes, it proves that it's neurotoxic in children. So there's like these researchers are grabbing at straws, and then they're using it as proof and to support their cause, where community water fluoridation has been studied for over 100 years. And meta-analysis after meta-analysis, which is the pillar, the gold standard of all of medical research, has been proven that at the dosage that we currently, which is 0.7 parts per million, it is safe in preventing cavities and has up to a 25% decrease in cavities in individuals across the board. So it's, for the poor and uneducated. I guess the other, somebody else had made a comment that they felt like cavities or the cavity process is more of a dietary and oral hygiene issue. So they're like, well, just brush your teeth and have a better diet. Well, let's be honest, behavioral changes are the hardest thing for anybody in their life to change, whether it be eating healthier, getting more sleep, de-stressing, things like that. And so these populations that don't have access to care, that don't have the money to pay for it, this is a passive preventative measure for them. So yes, it's not going to stop all cavities, but it's going to make the cavities they do get less severe, slow down the process, and prevent some of the cavities.
So why is this an all or none conversation?
As far as what?
If fluoridation is a neurotoxin at a certain level, and the county is able to regulate the amount of fluoridation and control it, then why not? Why is this yes to fluoride or no to fluoride the only two options? I don't understand what the problem is in having a middle ground.
Decrease the amount in the water?
Yeah. Why isn't that part of the conversation? Why are we saying yes and no?
Well, and there's always the fact that you can buy a filter for your own home to
Exactly.
take the fluoride out of it, but yet you're taking the fluoride away from others. Like, where does that
As
right
I'm
end
just
in someone else's?
looking at reviews, there are some, we are not the only county in the country that are facing this problem. Apparently New Hampshire and everywhere else it's being discussed, right?
I'm sorry, we're the only county?
I'm asking if the.
Oh, no, I
Say we're
mean,
not.
it's not widespread. I think, there's 72% of the counties in the country have water fluoridation, and the Healthy Goals Initiative that the country sets, the goal is 77. And actually North Carolina fares pretty well. I think there's 82% of the counties in North Carolina do fluoridate. But the issue too becomes like, you have to think of water fluoridation also as like a halo effect. So like, we also have responsibilities to other surrounding counties, that people are coming into our schools and using our water sources and things like that. But it's not an all or nothing. Like Amy said, like if you do have a choice not to have fluoridated water. If you want to, you can buy a reverse osmosis and put it in your
That I
house.
understand,
You
but
can drink
as
water.
a county-wide discussion, why is this, am I reading it incorrectly? Are we having a conversation that says yes or no only as the two options, or is there a room for middle ground for you to go and say, well, if it's controlled to a certain level, then.
Well, that's what it is right now. It's controlled at a certain level, and it's
And it was
tightly
lowered, wasn't
monitored.
it? Like-
It's well monitored. It's got state and federal regulations about how much they're monitoring, how frequently they're monitoring.
Right.
The only thing
Are
that's
they
not
not open to
monitored,
the
I think, is
discussion of
wells.
lowering the levels of fluoride? They are not?
Well, the recommended level is 0.7, and that
we adhere
has
to that.
been viewed and studied as being effective in terms of having a benefit on dental decay. And so, I mean, it's just as has been shared, that is the safe, effective level that has been identified. One of the questions that was raised or concern was that, well, there's other opportunities for people to get fluoride in their through toothpaste, through dental varnish now that is available, mouthwash. And there is more exposure to fluoride than there was in 1960 when this was first developed. However, this is a consistent way to get fluoride to a large number of people in a consistent way that also addresses, some folks who may not get adequate dental care or have resources to get some of the
And
services
they've also
needed.
lowered it. It used to be 1,
Yes.
and they reassess, and they say, you know what, you're right, like we are finding more people are using fluoride. And that's why I'm saying this absolutely should be brought up regularly, because new things do come up, and they've lowered it, and they were adjusting it, and they are testing it to see its efficacy, and to see if the levels are still where they need to be at. But you have to realize that the dental care and access to care and the extent of decay is so devastating to that vulnerable population. And the community response, the non-professionals response that came to the meeting, the only thing that they had to say is me. It's my choice, it's my right, it's my this. As opposed to, we need to really be thinking this on the community level and what's best for the community. Because yes, you absolutely have that right. You can drink other sources, but these people have access to their tap, and they need a consistent passive preventative measure. And by being narrow-minded like that and thinking it's not the betterment of the society or the county as a whole. And it seemed like that was the big sticking point, I guess, was
Do you know-
the individual freedoms.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do you know who, proposed getting rid of the fluoride in the water? Like, where'd that come from?
I don't know. See, this is like
Like,
how
who's
this is
proposing
all
it?
set up and how
Yeah.
the channels, I have no idea. Because I would have thought that they would have came here, we would have made our recommendations, and then it would have gone there. So I don't really truly understand the structure of this.
Local and statewide, though, it just seems like we are getting polarized, and it is concerning that things can go through like that you don't even hear about until after it's done.
I know that there were multiple discussions. I obviously was not involved in any of those discussions. Obviously, there were many members of the community who came and spoke to the board. They spoke at the public speaking
people like residents of the
session.
county.
And then the motion was actually made by Commissioner Williams, who is part of this board. And the motion that he made was in regard primarily to the choice component, in terms of the language that was written. And then the feedback that has come, to your point, has been from a number of different people who were members of the community.
What was his motion?
I think-
I'll pull it up and read it to you.
I think though that some of the people that showed up, just based on who, I recognize a few individuals, I feel like they had channels that made them aware of this. Like it wasn't like your average Joe. Like I've discussed this with friends in my neighborhood, and they had no idea this was good. You know what I mean? So like, and some of the people I know have ties to the people on the Board of Commissioners that spoke. So I think there was some channels that were.
And that's my thought on this. In addition to where do we go from here on this one, I would like to revisit how do we prevent stuff like this from happening. You know, like, because I do think that that can easily happen. I've seen it happen on other things recently that weren't public health.
And I haven't heard of it
Scary.
before either, and I feel like I'm well in tune with like paying attention to things that are going on in the county, my local
Yeah, me
government,
too.
so I hadn't heard anything about this.
I hadn't either.
So Dennis, do you feel like the most effective would be to vote yes or no, or to try to vote to make a recommendation to slow it down? I mean, because the way you answered it before, it was like, this is happening. And it was just the nuance of the language that they were using.
Well, I think they're gonna vote on the second reading of what they voted on the last time. And so I think it can vote it up or vote it down, just like Dr. Smith said. And if they don't pass it the second reading, then it fails.
But if they say 3-2, it goes through.
Pass.
Yeah.
It will, yes.
They can't table it though, so I
Well,
guess
they could
delay the vote.
they could vote it down and then choose to
Revisit
table it or bring it back to this board or choose some other
So they have to
action.
vote either way.
They're gonna have to vote either way, and it's a matter, what they do after they vote it down is, I mean, for that matter, it would fail.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have to necessarily do anything at that point.
It sounds like to me that this board sounds like there might be a consensus to at least send some type of communication to the commissioners that we wish we were more involved or wish that they would table it. I mean, that's whether they do it or not is another thing, but I think if we can have a mechanism that we could send something that we wish that they would table it for more information for them to study perhaps. Is that possible?
So one option might be to take a vote if we had consensus on it, and if we didn't, then take a vote on if we had consensus on requesting a table. Like if we weren't, the first one was about saying no.
I think you could vote to do just what you did, or what you just said. I mean, you could vote to ask that it be delayed, tabled, how you want to describe it. I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that when they vote, they're going to be voting on this second reading of what they voted on at the last meeting. They can't entertain anything else. Now, your reason for getting that in front of them may cause them to rethink their action.
And I apologize, I don't have, the minutes aren't available yet, so I don't have the exact motion. On the 16th of January at the regular meeting, there was an agenda item 24049, and at that point the board heard heard comments from stakeholders and experts concerning fluoride in water treatment systems, and the board directed staff to draft an ordinance amendment prohibiting the introduction of fluoride into water treatment systems that Union County owns, over which it has complete control over the fluoridation in water treatment. And the board also directed that the public be invited to comment on that topic. And so that, if I remember correctly, that actually was a 4-0. There were only 4 commissioners present at that meeting, and that was a 4-0 vote on January the 16th. And then obviously it came back on February the 5th. And I apologize, I don't have that specific language that was utilized.
Did you say it was 2409 on February 5th? Like what?
February
Agenda
3-2.
item was 24-049, yes.
So if we make a motion, we settle on whatever
No,
we.
excuse me, 24092, I'm sorry.
If we decide either way, to either ask for a stall or to vote one way or the other, who passes along this information, our recommendation? Is this something formal that we have to address? I mean, how does that information, how does that recommendation get presented to them?
It can be done both ways, and meaning one or the other, or both consecutively. We will take any information tomorrow that you provide today and share that with the county manager and our county management office. And then if you all choose to send something to the Board of Commissioners, obviously you can do that separately as well.
We could also send something.
That's what I'm saying. If the board, if you all as
But I
the,
mean, if the board votes on something, that action
right,
could be communicated and
to,
shared.
yes, absolutely. Any action that you take, we would share that as well. Yes, sorry.
So,
When's their vote? 219 or 216?
it's next
19.
Monday.
It was January the 16th.
What
Was the
numbers
initial.
should we need for a quorum? How many board members do we need?
Right now we have 10 member seats actively filled, so 6.
So we have 7 today. Well, I mean, personally, for myself, as a dental professional, I would vote as a board, that we take a stance. But I understand if others are not comfortable, but to me, it's 100 years of research. I mean, there's not a question in my mind whether or not that this would be devastating if this were removed for our population. And so I vote and I motion to send our recommendations to the board to not take the water out of the fluoride.
I will second your motion.
Second reading.
To not take the fluoride out.
But the motion was to put a vote, right?
Do we have to do that first?
Yeah.
Oh, sure,
Yeah, and then I will second that motion.
So the motion is to send communications to the board not to take the fluoride out, is that correct?
correct.
Which I second.
Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Can I abstain?
It's not the vote on it, it's the vote
This is the
to
vote.
make.
To have
the
the
vote,
vote.
To have a
Yes,
vote.
I'm okay with making a vote.
Okay,
And then I vote to make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners that we don't advise taking the fluoride out of the water.
any second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
This is the vote.
That's
Yeah,
right,
this
this
is
is
the
the one
vote.
where you abstain.
I abstain.
Okay,
So we,
so how's that gonna get communicated, Janet?
I will share that tomorrow with the county manager. And so
you'll be able to do the letter for us, or tell them, or whatever?
I
Or do we
will
need to write
not be able
something?
to write a letter
That's
on
what I
their
was going to
behalf.
say, or do we have to write something?
Yes, and we will share that with, well, the manager and the clerk to the Board of Commissioners.
sign that? We have
Yes.
to get it to you?
I mean, I will
can
share
formulate
your
something
vote
for
tonight,
everyone's thoughts.
but if you want
Yeah.
anything, we will share the vote that you took tonight, but if you want anything specific in writing to them, then that needs to come from you all.
If you share the vote
I will
to
absolutely.
the county manager, then he'll.
Yes, and to the clerk to the board of
Because
commissioners.
that's the advice thing.
Yes.
And then so circling back to preventing this from happening again, how can we be brought into, instead of bypassed, major public health? All health things should come through here. That's the purpose of this board.
They seat us, they place us on this board for that purpose.
Yes, they're asking us for our expertise, yet bypass. So how do we do that?
I can commit, so I'm just thinking about the timing of this specific action that was taken, and it was taken after your board meeting, the last meeting, so in terms of being able to share information with you all proactively, we weren't able to do that in a meeting setting because there hasn't been a meeting setting for that to occur.
Is there any policy changes that we can make to cause this to filter through, like to force it to filter through us? Because right now, just saying they want to be involved is great, but that's not forcing anyone's hand.
It's almost like it'd have to be with the Union County Board of Commissioners, like it would have to be their policy that things, anything health related is run through here
Yeah.
before it's presented to them, I think.
Yeah.
We could also make a recommendation of that.
Yeah.
That they change their
Separate.
policy.
But I don't know how you change their procedures, like that would be up to
Yeah.
them.
That they seek that before going to the.
But that's the only way, because they're the only ones that, if they approve the agenda items, they know, so if it was a health related topic, they would have to say, no, you have to go to us first
Yeah.
and then to them.
So can we make that recommendation too, that they change their policy, or it's not?
Maybe just a resolution requesting to be allowed to give input, because it is ultimately their decision,
Yeah,
you know, and just, I think if we had a resolution letting them know that we would like to have input on all public health related matters, you know, that come, we would be glad to provide that input, and
Yeah.
very willingly would do so, and would like to be asked and included.
yeah, and notified prior.
Language like that.
Yeah,
And if they, put it out, if they had to make a notice of it and put it out 60, then it never would fall in between meeting dates like that. You
It should be
know,
good for
Yeah.
Commissioner Williams to be here, because he could be the conduit for that. I'm thinking at least to start it.
And, well, yes, but you all can also, if you would like to, again, take an action and/or prepare a resolution and provide that, that's something that absolutely can be then provided to them. And I think, to your point, that is appropriate because they set their agendas and take action, so they would have to make a decision in that regard to such a request.
I mean, that's where I think at minimum, if they just had that 60-day, right, that would give us a chance to be notified of it and then try to get involved if they weren't looping us in, you know, so that we wouldn't be coming from behind like this because it fell between two meetings and we don't. So we would have to make a motion, or if we were doing that today, or we could put this on the agenda for next month.
You
Either
could
of the
put
two.
this on the agenda for next month, absolutely, in terms of like a resolution, the resolution idea, yeah.
Because that would take some time to.
Right, right, and I think that would make sense to do that, and then, you all, well, the chair and the vice chair are able to bring any items for the agenda that, you all can vote, by quorum to add something to the agenda, or chair and/or vice chair can put something on the agenda, so that can happen for the next meeting with no issue. Yes,
Sounds
exactly.
like-
You can direct us to do that as well, but that's how the agenda will get made. Is if you ask us to do that, then we'll put that on as an agenda item for the next agenda.
Just like Amy said and Dr. McMahon said, if you read these articles, it seems like they've already kind of granted, or they want us to have that type of authority. If you look at section 2, it says the Human Services Board shall have the responsibility to protect and promote the public health in Union County. And the board shall have the authority to adopt rules necessary for that purpose. So in other words, it's kind of saying that, but we just don't have the right mechanisms in place.
To exercise our right,
And
yeah.
if we were to draft a letter in addition to Janet reaching out, I think that referencing that would be helpful. And then with regard to the resolution, I would make a motion that we put that on next month's agenda as well to prevent this. Because I don't think we are prepared to do that tonight.
Second the motion.
So the motion is again, what is again, Amy?
To put a resolution on this on next month's agenda.
On next month's agenda, second by Dr. McCann. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Opposed, so carries.
The only unresolved is, you're gonna say something, the only thing we didn't settle is if we were writing a letter.
I'll write a letter and then I'll email it to the board. And then you guys can look at it, make changes, suggestions, and then if you feel comfortable signing it, then we would add your name to it.
Okay. Sounds good. We don't need a motion for that, do we? No. Okay.
Because it's not.
Okay. Are there any more division reports?
I'll go really quickly, Earl. I know we're running short of time. I just had a shout out for my DSS team. I pulled the numbers from HR and we are 90% of our positions are filled right now, so I'm very proud of that. It's been a very long road. But we are still looking for some social workers in foster care. Medicaid expansion, we're mostly staffed. We still have 2 positions open. And then adult Medicaid, we have a few that we could fill as well. Just a heads up for you all as the Human Services Board, the state of North Carolina, so North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Division of Social Services is in the middle of a Child and Family Services review. So the feds come in and are auditing the state, which basically means they're auditing all 100 DSS agencies and their child welfare practices. So we're in the middle of that, and that'll last the majority of this year, and then we'll get those results back. Medicaid expansion, the apps are still coming in, not as many as we were getting when the federal marketplace for healthcare was also open. We were receiving anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 Medicaid applications every Monday. Thank the good Lord that has slowed down, but we're trying to catch up on those. So if you hear from anyone in the community that says, hey, I filled out an application a month ago, I still haven't heard back, I promise you we are working as fast as we can. We've improved overtime, and staff are trying as hard as they can to get those applications completed. The last update is that Union County has approved to start a family treatment court, and DSS will be very closely involved with that. So I'm going to let you all know that. It starts in March, and that is where we will be working with families who have substance use issues, and it's kind of a diversion program for those families to help keep their kids from being removed into foster care. I think that it has shown really promising results in a few other counties in North Carolina, so I'm very happy to see that get started here, and hopefully we can turn some things around for some of the families in our community. So I will let y'all know more about that as we have more information.
Thanks, Ashley. I was gonna ask you about those numbers for Medicaid expansion, because I was just wondering how many people really know in the public about Medicaid expansion.
It's quite a few of them. We've been getting applications in overwhelmingly. I think the majority of those that we saw had to do with the federal marketplace, and you know, when you go in to apply for the Affordable Affordable Care Act health insurance, it will automatically send you through Medicaid first to see if you qualify, and then through the Affordable Care Act other plans and policies. So that has definitely been happening. They are supposed to be starting this month with a PR push to let folks in the community know how to apply and where to apply. So I'm sure you'll be seeing more stuff about that in this month and next month.
I'm sorry.
They haven't updated their dashboard. There is a public dashboard on DHHS's website. I checked it before this meeting. It has not been updated, so I can't give you a total number right now. In December, it was our first month. We said we were at 2.9% of our total population. I know we are well above that. We were anticipating and did the math that we were expecting around 10% of our population to qualify. But as soon as they post the January numbers, I'll let y'all know.
I know one of the main things about the Medicaid expansion, one of the main changes was that, you know, a single person, no matter what poverty level the person was at, they just didn't meet the category, so they could never get Medicaid. But now with Medicaid expansion, all these individuals that are right around 133% of the poverty level, single, you know, we're talking about guys, you know, they would now be eligible for Medicaid. And that's what I was wondering. Someone else on the street or something, I asked one person about Medicaid, I knew it was started here. He said, what's the Medicaid expansion? So I know there's a lot of people out there who still just don't know what Medicaid expansion is.
I agree.
Along those lines, what about, I think there were other people who heard about it and applied before the new number, you know, before it actually was applied. And so there were people who kind of fell through and they got denied right before, you know, we were looking at it from that. What, if anything, are we doing as a county to revisit that, or because we're still digging out?
As a county, we can't breathe right now from applications. I'll be very honest with you.
They can reapply.
They can reapply.
Yeah,
And
I
the
meant about awareness
The
and stuff.
state is supposed to be starting their big PR push. I think the state also recognized that we were drowning. We've been very clear, they can see the numbers. The fact that they couldn't necessarily change the start date because of when it was approved with the budget, but the fact that it fell at the same time that the federal marketplace opened, and they know that consistently every year, that's when we get hit the hardest with applications. And so it kind of set us up for failure. Not intentionally, I don't think, but it did. And so they're giving us some grace to get out of that and get some people approved before they really push that PR across the state. So it's coming. I just think they're giving us some time to approve some applications.
I know DHHS just contracted with 2 of the families that I support and trained them on how to train families.
So they have set up with community agencies and groups in the counties to teach them how to help people apply for Medicaid on ePass, which is online.
Correct. And
That's
one
really
of
cool.
those is in Union.
The libraries have also been trained. And we have a ePass application site at the library, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's a new project. We funded that with ARPA dollars. Thank you.
Very quick. Our volunteer income tax program opened, VITA, on February 5th, so that was a week ago. So we are taking applications, and that is income-based, and basically the threshold is making $64,000 or less a household. So that'll be open until taxes are due, or a couple days before.
Are you still looking for volunteers?
Always looking for volunteers, yes,
My
ma'am.
husband's an accountant, so.
Oh, okay. He can call us, our main number, and I think that is 704-296-4312.
No, they'll take it,
And, you know, just in case someone complains too, we had someone call who filed their taxes on Thursday and said, is it ready today? It's Monday. We just started. So we've been bombarded with a lot too, so it's gonna take time. That's it.
And Michelle Morcana asked me to share with you all that they had the chance to participate in an open house for the American Legion Post 535 that just opened on Saturday in Unionville, and apparently that was a pretty exciting event with about 120 people in attendance, which is kind of cool, including Miss North Carolina and Miss Unionville, Young Miss Unionville, and Junior Miss Unionville, as well as Representative Dean Art. And so she said that it was a really nice event for the veterans, and if you happen to be in Unionville, to go and check out the American Legion Post. Cool.
I have one last question before we close. If there was something that we wanted to learn and we want, how, is there a process of how we could request that be presented to us?
Just tell us.
As the board,
And
well,
we would try to make it happen.
so I would like to hear from our behavioral health collaborative the negative impact or any change from the Parents' Bill of Rights on access within our schools to mental health services. What the decrease in the numbers is on the referrals, or what they're
Specific numbers.
Yep, like just kind of have an understanding. So we just had an understanding, like what were we doing before, our successes.
I think we could provide you with
Versus
data
where
that
we're
wouldn't
at now.
necessarily be it would have time frame correlations, but yes, we could do that.
To provide the data, not a presentation.
Well, we could do a presentation, but I think it would be
Either way.
on their services. Service numbers before and service numbers after.
I mean, I think for most, even understanding their services would be awesome. But like for me personally, I'm interested in what's the numbers looking like already, like from that.
And a presentation on the services, I think, would be beneficial as a whole, quite frankly, just from an awareness perspective.
Yeah.
It's important work that they do and that the school system does,
Yeah.
regardless of which.
We're good with that. The last one we did was right before the new folks came on, so it makes sense.
I think that would be great, because I think that would be beneficial to hear where their numbers came from, what they built it up to, and then what they're at now, like with that change. Thank you.
Okay, are there?
We'll do that at next month's meeting, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other business? How about announcements?
I will let you all know that we got a Delta Dental grant, second year, small, $5,000, but it's to assist in supporting dental care for at-risk children who have difficulty with pain. So we're excited about that, getting a second year of that. We'll serve probably 20 to 25 kids with that.
Any other comments or announcements? Okay, well, I apologize if I wasn't too fast for my first time, but I'm hoping that, I think that we open up some opportunities for us to learn more as a board and be able to interact more as a board in accordance with these articles for the board. And so I'm happy about that. I'm a resident of Union County for 9 years now, and I care about Union County. And even though I know this county is a fast-growing county, but we still need to take care of the people. And I know this country, we take care of the people more than anybody else. But that's why we're glad to be Americans. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.